guys, this is Russ, and this is The Overlooked. Today we're going to get into the disappearance of Paresh Patel. Patel is a native of India who came to the United States as a teenager. He was a co-owner of three clubs in Austin, Texas around the time of his disappearance. He is described by his family and friends as being extremely driven, as being a businessman, someone who was kind of known as the Jerry Jones of 6th Street because of his ambition and his hard nosed personality. Now, it is said that Paresh may have ruffled the feathers of many people in the downtown Austin scene. They said he was just very determined and ambitious when it came to his businesses. He wanted to expand, he wanted to build an empire. But the way he went about it didn't necessarily go smoothly with everyone. Now, the three clubs that he owned at the time were called Azukar, Malagio, and there was a music venue on 6th Street in 2000. I'm not 100% sure of that one's name. Most articles just refer to it as the music venue on 6th Street. He was last seen by one of his business associates. He was supposed to be en route to another meeting that was supposed to be in the warehouse district of downtown Austin. That was September the 25th of 2000. Now, it's reported that he never made it to that meeting. Not only that, but he failed to pick up his children later on that evening, and that was something that was completely out of character for him. That was the last time he was ever seen or heard from. At the time, it was reported that he was carrying about $15,000 on him when he was last seen. So, kind of as reported, he was last seen on the 25th of September. Well, the very next day on the 26th, his white Lexus SUV was discovered. It was parked around 4th and Lavaca Street in East Austin, which was not in the area he was last seen, nor was it in the area he was expected to be going. So let's kind of dig into the details about what was going on in Paresh's life at the time of his disappearance. So right before his disappearance, the music venue on 6th Street, it had actually just celebrated its grand opening weekend, the weekend before he disappeared. He was also in the middle of what was supposed to be kind of a nasty custody battle over his two sons at the time of his disappearance. We also find out that he actually fathered another child, a young girl, with another woman besides his wife. He was in the middle of a child support battle, and actually, family court had ordered him to pay $20,000 in back support plus fines for that young child. Now, as I stated earlier, he was a partner in the clubs that he owned, and he was partner with all three of those businesses, supposedly with Hussein Yassin, someone who was also known as Mike Yassin, and his brothers. So I bring up the Yassin brothers because in 2012, Hussein, Mike Yassin, and his brothers and 9 others were indicted on federal drug and money laundering charges. So basically, what happened was the group was accused of crimes that included everything from cocaine distribution to the purchase of guns to be used during drug deals and money laundering. Now, in an article titled Mystery and Intrigues Grows in Yassin Case, Federal Case Against Downtown Club Owners Takes Another Turn, we get the writer who kind of breaks down what these charges are that Mike is involved in, but also the other 9. Essentially, it states that, there was a government informant. He was sold a kilo of cocaine and 2 guns by individuals. Now, according to the feds, Mike Yassin and his executive assistant agreed with the informant to then use multiple of their bars, which was owned by Yassin Enterprise, which is him and his brothers, to launder money. And then it was reported that he actually gave some of that money to his youngest brother, Hadi Ali Yassin to found his firm, which was called Famous Vaca. Now, the other people charged in that case, they were charged with a variety of drug related charges. I mean, this case is a roller coaster of a case, okay? I mean, there's talk of additional fraud, tax evasion, there's talks of possible terrorist ties, and I'm not going to get into that. I gave you the names, I gave you the article. You can look it up and follow the rabbit hole that is that case yourself. But that's not the reason we're here. But I did think it was important to mention because when that 2012 case is open, we start to hear the police talking a little bit more about the Yassin brothers, particularly Mike. Because it's around this time that police come out to the public and say, oh, yeah, by the way, Mike Yassin, he's being investigated in connection to an unsolved murder. The Austin Police Department Homicide Cold Case Unit actually issued a statement confirming that they were treating Mike Yassin as a person of interest in the disappearance of his business partner, Paresh Patel. Now, keep in mind, at this point in time, it's been about 12 years since Patel has disappeared. We also find out that officials are saying that Patel had a bit of disagreement with his business partners, alluding to Mike and his brother right before his disappearance. Now, in regards to that 2012 case, Mike Yassin is actually given about 3 years in federal prison. He's ordered to pay $2.5 million in restitution to the IRS, basically for engaging in tax fraud scheme using his Austin nightclubs. And while we hear the official stating that, I do think it's important to bring up that one of Patel's other business partners, Josh Cisneros, he actually had came out to the public and said that, he's actually really surprised that Yassin was tied to Patel's disappearance. He made a statement in one article with thestatesman.com saying that, no, they were great friends, they vacationed together, and that it was pretty much generally believed that Patel's disappearance was connected to robbery, because we got to remember he had a lot of money on him in cash at the time of his disappearance. Now, we also find out that in 2004, a former gang member of a prison gang called the Texas Syndicate Gang had testified in another case saying that Patel was murdered by members of the gang and he was buried underneath a grocery store on the outside of the city. This has never been able to be confirmed, but it is suspected that Patel is deceased. Now, though he's described as an aggressive entrepreneur and businessman, he's also described as a very devoted father who cared and loved his boys. And there's a lot of things that's important to remember in this case, okay? One, Patel had a lot going on in his life around the time of his disappearance. I mean, he was in the middle of what seemed to be an aggressive custody battle. He fathered a child with another woman, and he was also in court with this other woman. And he did not want to pay. He was told to pay $20,000 and back pay for child support to this woman. And articles report that he was refusing to pay that. And let's not forget, he had some ties to some risky people. Okay, not others, but there are other businesses in that area that we later found out years later is connected to organized crime. And then not only that, it said that he was not well liked in a downtown business scene. He was known to be very aggressive with his business approaches. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up is because I do believe that the police named Yassin as a person of interest for a reason, but I also want us to keep in mind there was a lot of other things going on as well. Unfortunately, around the time of his disappearance, there could have been a number of people who had major issues with him. Not only that, but he was carrying a large amount of money on him in cash in a downtown area. He was driving an expensive car. He could have been totally randomly targeted. Or another thing that's kind of floating, mostly pretty much everyone around the net pretty much believes that he is no longer with us, that he is deceased. But you do hear other theories. One of the theories that he took that $15,000 and he just walked away. He knew he had um, people who were after him. He knew that he had this money in cash. He didn't want to deal with the child support case. He didn't want to deal with his custody battle. I did see a user or two social media kind of wondering about that. That is a thing that's possible. It's a possibility. I personally don't think so. It really seems like family believes no, he would not have walked away from his sons. Also, in regards to that custody case and not want to pay back that 20,000, he had $15,000 on him in cash. He was known to be a good businessman, aggressive, yes, but good. And I highly doubt 20,000 was that big of a deal to him. I really don't believe it was a big enough deal for him to just walk away from his life. I just don't think it's something that's likely to happen. But I did see a user or two on different forums bring that up. Another thing that is brought up is, especially when you look at articles or forums where people are actually from that area, especially around the time that happened, there were rumors that he was buried underneath a grocery store in the area. And we know some of that comes from that testimony that came out in 2004. Now, where was this testimony? On what case? I do not know. It's never clearly stated. Almost every article about this case mentions this, but no one says in a testimony in a case of, Texas versus blah, blah, blah. We don't know. It never states. It just says, hey, there was a testimony at some point in time, 2004, where this former gang member said that, yo, we killed him and we buried him somewhere here, here, here. But here's the thing. The place that everybody thinks he was buried, they actually had a representative come out and clearly state that, hey, you guys, no one is buried underneath our foundation. When this disappearance happened and took place, the foundation was already laid. We were actually in the middle of hiring process. I'm not going to give the name of that company out because I feel bad that they had to come out and say it a couple of times. I'm assuming at some point it might have affected their business, and I would never want to do that, especially if we don't know if that's true or not. But also, I'm wondering, the police, they came out and they named Yasin as a person of interest, but he's kind of the only one that we really hear the police talking about. And it's the only detail we really hear from the police other than that general, this is what happened, this is the last time he was seen, and that's pretty much it. And it has me wondering if when this testimony came out, they checked it out and I just really couldn't find enough evidence. I'm not sure if that's what happened or not, but they don't really seem to focus on this. The police haven't really seemed to confirm what they have done with that information. But I'm wondering, I just think it's probably not enough evidence for them to really do much with that. And I think it might be a reason. Now, I did come across one article where it stated that the person who made that statement in that 2004 testimony, that he was actually one of the people indicted in that 2012 case with Mike Yasin and his brother. Now, I could not confirm this. I looked and I looked and I tried. I did have one article that mentioned a name, and I did find that name on the list of people who were indicted, but it was the only place that listed that person's name, and it was not a reputable source. And so I don't want to throw that person's name out there because I know how hard it is to try to clear your name once someone says something, even if you're able to prove it later and be like, no, that's not a thing. Once one person says something, it can kind of create a snowball effect. And now that's what you are forever known as. That's how, you know, unfortunately, you get people who have to sue and do those sort of things because, unfortunately, their name gets mixed up with some things that they may or may not have been involved with. So I'm not going to say his name because I could not verify that 100%. And I really, I really try to not speak of things as fact if I do not know them to be fact. I try my hardest to. So, but if he is one of the people who was indicted with the Yassine brothers, that was that would make it particularly interesting because now we have a connection between someone that admitted that no, he was killed and someone who is a person of interest. Now, we have to keep in mind that one of his other business partners that did not seem to be related to the Yassine brothers, as far as I know, he came out and said, no, that was not a thing. No one was thinking like, we all kind of just assumed he was dead and that this had something to do with a robbery. That's something to keep in mind as well. This is someone who owned a business with him, but we don't know how closely tied in he might be with Mike. So, it's one of those things to keep in mind, but also it's one of those things that could literally mean nothing at all. Also, another thing to keep in mind is again, family and associates say that, he wasn't exactly, um, like holding hands singing kumbaya with everybody. He was known to be an aggressive businessman, and that he actually ruffled some feathers. So we really don't know all of whose feathers he ruffled. We don't know, and we don't know in what way. And I want to bring that up because I don't want us to get pigeonholed into one particular person. Yes, if you know anything about that person, you believe like, yes, I think I know some things that tie in, definitely. I'm going to post the numbers to call. If you have any information, call those numbers and put that information. But also, let's think about these other things that are outside of the box that has been presented pretty much mainly in media as, hey, this is the main thing we're focusing on, because there is a lot of stuff going on, okay? There's a lot of twists and turns that this could possibly take. And so I just want us to really think about that. Now, yes, Paresh was known to be a vicious, kind of businessman. It sounds like he might have been a little cutthroat, but he was also known to be a devoted father who loved his boys. And his boys are still out there, and they probably want to know what happened to their dad. They want to know where he is. What happened? Why isn't he here? Can he come back? And they deserve to have those questions answered. I'm asking if you have any information about this case. Definitely Google, look into it. I'll post some of the articles I looked into myself below, and you guys can read it for yourself. Share his picture, share his story, share this video, and share others. Go on YouTube, watch other videos on there. Let's see if we can get the knowledge out to the public, because there's someone somewhere that knows something. And we can only get that information if people know that there's people out here looking for that information. I'm going to post the information of the Austin Police Department. Their cold case unit is still working with this case. And I'm going to post their information. And I'm going to also post the information for the Crime Stoppers police themselves. And you're like, hey, I kind of want nothing to do with this. Give them a call. If you know any of the people whose names are involved, or maybe it's someone I have not mentioned whatsoever, but you're like, no, I remember him. I remember this guy's face. I used to see him all the time around here. Give them a call. You'll be surprised how some things that we think are so little and mean nothing have helped solve and crack cases. You would be surprised. There's so many cases that are solved by things that someone knew and kept in their mind for 10, 20 years because they thought, if I know, the police know. Or this is something so little and so simple, and I don't think it will ever help anyone, but you would be surprised. Now, I will say, I do believe the police have more information that they are kind of keeping close to their chest, that they're not really revealing. And the reason I believe that is because it seems like they seem to believe there are some high rollers. There are some shot callers involved in this case, okay? I mean, even when we talk about the 2012 case with the Yassine brothers, I mean, they're talking possible terrorist ties, they're talking organized crime, they're talking prison gangs, involvement, all of that, okay? When you're dealing with high rollers and stuff like that, a lot of times police like to keep their information as close to them as possible and not really reveal too much to the public because they're like, we don't want them to know how much we know. And usually in those type of cases, they kind of just it's a game of chess for them, okay? They are like, no, we have to think two steps ahead if we want to be able to solve this, to close this, okay? I do believe that's what we have going on here. Kind of like, again, when that 2012 case came out, the police came out of nowhere. It was like, oh yeah, by the way, he is a person of interest in this case that we are still actively working on. And people were kind of shocked. People were like, wait, what? We haven't even heard anything about this case in 10, 12 years. But they were still working on it. And they had him as a person of interest. So I think they have a lot more information that they are not letting us know. And I think they're just waiting for the right moment or to get the right evidence, to get the right amount of evidence before we will really see them push and pull. But one of you guys might have that missing link. One of you guys might have that last key that helps them go, aha, we got them. And that is the point here. We want to share, we want to pass knowledge about the case so that others that might have information that can help families get their loved ones back to them, know what happened to their loved ones, have that peace of knowing. That is the purpose of this episode, of this podcast, of this YouTube series, is that we spread the knowledge so that people know there are people asking these questions, and maybe someone with answers can come forward to the police and let the police know so that people can be brought home, families can get closure. As always, I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful week. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and I will be back with a new episode next Sunday.